Hello, everybody. Joining mid-sentence. Thank you for being part of the morning meeting experience. You'll notice Sean is not here. Sean is not here today. More on that in just a moment. Thank you for joining. And Friday, so we'll have our winners and losers and what to look for over the weekend. And Dan and our new host, our guest host, will run through the day, and then we'd love your questions. So if you want to be part of the conversation and you're here on the two-way platform, say it with me. Raise your hand. Say it with me. No smack in the chat. Say it with me. Peace, love, and understanding. We're very happy to have you all here. And there's a lot going on, as they say in the news business. So without further ado, everyone meet Larry O'Connor, who's filling in for Sean today. The host of O'Connor and Company, the morning show on the best radio station of my childhood, Washington, D.C.'s WMAL. Tim Brandt was on WMAL, too. We're talking about Ken Beatrice. These names will mean nothing to any of you unless you lived in Washington back in the day. But that is a powerhouse station.
And the morning show was Hardin and Weaver. I'm sure
Hardin
you remember.
and Weaver. I do remember Hardin and Weaver.
Dominated.
Incredible. Yes,
and
they dominated.
Hardin, they were morning team, and Hardin has the distinction of not only being the morning man on WMAL, but he was the original voice of Smokey Bear.
That's correct. That is, I can be a second source on that for you all. Larry also is the host of the daily live streaming show. Larry, how'd you think of the name?
Look at that.
It's a astounding lack of creativity from the
what time is Larry on?
That's at noon. It doesn't conflict with any of your shows, Mark.
Yeah, that's good. So noon, and people can listen to it on townhall.com. Where can they listen?
They can get it on all the platforms: YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and also at all the town hall sites.
And then is it on demand as a podcast later in the day?
Absolutely.
All right. Larry, what else should people know about you?
Got a great pocket square. Matches.
This is my homage to Dan. You should. I guess the most noteworthy thing about me is that I make my own yogurt at home. Believe it or not, I am a right-wing, conservative, Trump-loving dude who makes his own yogurt. Also, this is a new career for me, relatively new. 15 years now I've been in the commentary, columnist, radio show business. Before that, I worked in the Broadway theater, actually, not as a performer, but as a manager. I worked for the Shubert Organization in New York for 5 years, owner and operator of 17 Broadway theaters. And then they moved me to Los Angeles, where for a decade I was the manager of the Shubert in Los Angeles. And that was my old career until Andrew Breitbart, the visionary internet icon, discovered me and sort of pulled me out of that life. And I started writing for him when he first started, before it was Breitbart News. He had Big Hollywood and Big Government, the fledgling news sites that he began, that has now become the Breitbart News Network. But I was I think I was the 7th employee of the company back in the day.
Larry, that's all incredible. And I mean that. So interesting. Where'd you live when you lived in Gotham City?
I lived in Carroll Gardens for a while in Brooklyn, and then the Upper East Side, but eventually Jersey City.
And what were the big shows you worked on?
Well, in New York, I worked for the main corporation, but it was the time when Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera. It was the early 90s.
They didn't launch then, but they were mainstays, right? Or did they launch?
No, they actually. Well, Les Mis opened in '87. I think Phantom was '91, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, I did national tours. But we did do the American premiere of 2 major productions. Sunset Boulevard, Andrew Lloyd Webber's epic with Glenn Close, that premiered in LA.
I saw that when it came here. It was excellent.
And by the way, Phantom of the Opera always on the Mar-a-Lago playlist, right?
That's right.
Oh yes,
Trump's favorite.
Trump loves Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's amazing.
And what was the other show besides Sunset that you launched
Ragtime. The Ragtime, which was the musical version of the epic turn of the century novel. It's a great show as well.
And did you go to a lot of Broadway when you were here?
Oh, God, yes. But I was starving, of course, so I would go for free. In fact, I would also, so this is funny, the executive secretary of the vice president of Shubert used to be an executive secretary at Madison Square Garden. And this was during the Rick Pitino, Patrick Ewing, Mark Jackson era. And they couldn't, believe it or not, they had a lot of empty seats at the Garden.
There were a lot of empty seats.
Coming off of the Huey Brown era, right? And so I got to go down and see a ton of Knicks games during those early seasons when they were young. Right. It was a blast.
One more question about Larry, and then we're going to take a poll. So be ready to vote, not with your yellow hand, but with your physical hand. My inclination now is to ditch the rundown and just talk to Larry about his life for the whole hour. So I'm going to ask for a show of hands of who's for that and who wants a regular show. Larry, when you lived in New York, were you already a conservative, or did that come later?
I was. So I grew up in Orange County, California, which,
Yeah.
as you'll
So,
remember, I think it was
yeah.
the 84 election.
Yeah.
Reagan referred to it as where
Yeah.
good Republicans go to die.
Yeah.
B1 Bob Dornan was my congressman,
Yeah.
right?
But here's the thing, Larry.
Yeah.
There's no more, forget Harvard, Madison, Wisconsin. There's literally no more liberal community than the Broadway community.
Yes. I like to say that.
Did your colleagues know you were conservative?
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't know that it would be a problem to be a conservative until I was in the office for a while and I started hearing the conversations. And then I realized, I like to say the entertainment industry leans to the left and the theater industry leans so far to the left that it's fallen and it can't get up.
Yeah.
So
were you ostracized, or that was in the pre-ostracization days?
I learned pretty quickly to keep it in the closet. Oh, no. There was ostracization back then. Everyone thinks this is a new era under Trump where people get canceled.
Larry was not the only member of the Broadway community keeping it in the closet.
Hey, let me tell you, a lot harder to keep this in the closet than anything else.
Well, and more advisable too in Broadway.
People who worked with me and knew me, and I worked on shows with them, and we actually had good relationships. Obviously, it would come out, and they realized who I was. And honestly, Mark, I think that it has helped my career as a talk radio host because, unlike a lot of my colleagues in the business, I actually do try to approach our topics in a way where, at the very least, if you don't agree with me, you can at least understand where I'm coming from. And I think I speak for a lot of my listeners. Listen, we've been able to grow a conservative morning show in Washington, D.C. over the 15 years I've been here. And you can't do that unless, you have some approachable
Larry, the signal crosses the Potomac River into Virginia. So
Northern Virginia.
Not northern,
Fairfax
it's pretty
County,
powerful signal. All right, show of hands. Who just wants me to interview Larry and Dan to interview Larry about his life? Raise your hand. All right.
Absolutely.
I see a few hands going up. Okay.
Yeah.
That speaks well of Larry and not so well of your love of the usual show. Larry,
they want to talk about James Comey. Come on. That's what they want to talk about.
I'm so interested in the topic of James Comey in general. Well, maybe we'll talk about it. But in general, I find it fascinating. I'll tell a quick Comey story. Comey was a hero of the right in 2016.
Yep.
And then he became a hero of the left when he crossed Trump. So I was at the White House the day Trump fired Comey. And so I was very immersed in the whole thing. And then that night, Stephen Colbert announced to his liberal audience, studio audience, that Trump had fired Comey. And the audience was paralyzed because it's like, is that a good thing? Like,
right.
Like, is Trump fired Comey? So because Comey has been on all sides of everything. Anyway, let's run through the day. Then we'll talk about stuff. We'll get to your questions. Maybe we'll add Comey to the rundown. And as always, well, Larry, I have one more question. What's something where MAGA is too extreme right for you? What's an issue where you just say, sorry, we've gone too far?
Oh, gosh. I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, is there such a thing as too far right?
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm asking you. Your answer might be nothing.
Well, I will tell you, I am a little uncomfortable with it. There are some people who do approach the Trump presidency as if he literally can do no wrong. And the second you actually raise a question and start to challenge, perhaps if this is the right way or the wrong way to go, you're suddenly an apostate and a traitor to the cause. That bothers me. I didn't like it when supporters of Obama behaved that way, and I certainly don't like it with Trump. Here's the bottom line. I don't trust politicians inherently, whether they're conservative or liberal, because they're politicians. And so if I raise a question and a challenge as to whether Trump is doing the right thing, we deserve to ask those questions. We must ask those questions. That's the whole point in a free republic.
Beautiful.
Welcome,
love that. Beautiful. Welcome in. All right. The president is on Air Force One, heading back to the United States. This planet is so big, folks, he won't be back at the White House till after 10 o'clock tonight because he's got to stop to refuel, because the greatest country in the history of the world cannot build an airplane for our president to fly nonstop back from the Middle East. Always bothers me that they have to refuel. Anyway, he's coming home. And this morning, before he left, he talked up quite a bit. And we'll get to that in a moment. In addition, don't know, as always, or almost always, don't know what the vice president's doing. Senate is out, the House is in. And at this hour, Paul, has that started yet? Can we take a live look at that? At this hour, and the Budget Committee is supposed to be trying to move along the reconciliation package. We'll begin shortly. Okay, then you can leave it up. Let's see if it begins shortly. While we're talking about this, so again, you could talk about reconciliation if you write for Punchbowl News or Politico. You could talk about it every day for 10 hours.
Mark?
We lost him. We lost
Maybe
him.
it's yeah.
See, this is a good thing, Dan. I'm
Yeah,
a
here we
host.
go. All right,
I
Larry.
can take
So now
over
let's
immediately.
yeah.
Gentlemen, time to
It's
ad
on
lib.
press court.
Mark,
Say
you just
again?
froze. Everyone just lost you.
You lost
had
me?
a great point you were about to make. We heard.
It was actually one of the smartest things I've heard you say on this platform, Mark.
Okay. How about now? Am I back?
You're good.
Not,
Yep.
not sure why that happened. Anyway, I don't know where you lost me, but I'll just cut to the chase. You'll read 100 stories in the next 2 weeks or more about how this bill can't pass. And you'll read lots of quotes from members saying, I'll never vote for the bill. Most of them will, but it may not pass, but most of them will. The problem they have now is they have to get through these incremental hurdles, right? Because they're not the climactic vote where they can twist every arm, and they have to twist arms all along the way. They may not get out of committee today, but even if it dies in committee, right? Even if 3 or 4 Republicans in committee say no, don't think the bill's dead. There's 17 procedural things they can do, including coming back and trying again. They may pull the vote. If they pull the vote, and you'll read news alerts from Politico saying bill is, dead. Believe me, they can't let this die. It might die, but they can't let it die. They will stay at it. And I talked to Charlie Kirk about this yesterday on Next Up. MAGA's not mobilized to pass this bill right now for a variety of reasons. The president's overseas. He's not making tons of calls. Maybe he's making some. But what happens in this committee is important, but it is not dispositive. If it goes well and they pass it, it's not dispositive, and if it goes down, it's not dispositive. So you can take that down. We'll check in if something happens. We'll come back. Let us know. All right. Now the president, as he was boarding Air Force One, he had plenty to say. So here's 103. The president talking about the trip.
Thank you very much. This was a great and just an amazing day. This was a little bit of an endurance test. He was just testing to see whether or not I had the endurance. I do very easily. We could have done it 10 times over. But what a beautiful job. It's made easier by the incredible work you've done. So thank you very much. On behalf of a lot of these people that came with me, congratulations. Beautiful job. Nothing like it.
All right. That wasn't boarding Air Force One, but that was shortly before he left. Here's the president talking about the Ukraine talks, 104.
I think it's time for us to just do it. I said, they all said Putin was going and Zelensky was going, and I said, if I don't go, I guarantee Putin's not going. And he didn't go, and I understand that, but we're going to get it. We're going to get it done. So
When do you think you'll meet the president?
as soon as we can set it up. I would actually leave here and go. I do want to see my beautiful grandson.
He's got a new grandson. I think it's his 9th grandchild, maybe. Tiffany's baby was born. Again, he did talk. I know you didn't see it there either, but he did talk as he was boarding Air Force One. And amongst the things he said was that Steve Witkoff has delivered to the Iranians a peace plan, a nuclear plan, and so that's a hot thing as well. All right, Dan. I talked to probably too much. 11th grandkid. Thank you very much, sir. Dan, I talked about reconciliation. What is your view of where we are on reconciliation?
Yeah, I still think they will find a way to pass it. I think that the dynamic continues to be, can they thread a needle to get enough moderates to accept some number on SALT, and can they kind of get enough Freedom Caucus members to ultimately be there? I think that the challenge they have right now is on budget. They need 4 Freedom Caucus members to approve it. So this is kind of maximum leverage right now here and at the Rules Committee, where Freedom Caucus members dominate. When they get to the floor, the moderates have a much better leverage. And I still think at the end of the day, the Freedom Caucus is going to get rolled. But, they delayed all these decisions, and now they're kind of at the point where they need to make some decisions. And part of the calculus is the Senate is going to change this bill. So you are looking at kind of getting rolled twice, which is even more painful because you're going to end up kind of backing up on that second vote. So we'll just see, but this is common. This happens for Democrats with their tight margins, and everyone tries to get the most they can.
Yeah, it's a great insight, by the way, about the Rules Committee, because Chip Roy really wanted to be there so he could help steer legislation like this in the Freedom Caucus's direction. But the calculus here, and I think you guys have been discussing this for the last couple of weeks, is what's going to be the bigger pain threshold, losing an actual House seat in a moderate district to a Democrat versus primarying a Republican that you may have a good relationship with, but if he gets primaried, it's just another Republican seat. And I think it's obvious they're going to be more concerned about losing those moderate seats.
Yeah. It's one of the rare times that is true. Usually the moderates get rolled in both parties. But in this instance, I think, they're calling them the majority makers, and they're not wrong.
And by the way, Trump's done it. I mean, he can point to a track record of saying, listen, I primaried these guys, and they're not your colleagues anymore. He's got a track record of doing that, and if he has to do it, he will.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you this question, and I'm going to ask it as a binary, even though I think the answer is probably somewhere in between. So right now, Speaker Johnson gave the moderates a bunch of stuff, phasing in some stuff on requirements and raising salt to a ridiculous, un-American level, et cetera, that salt cap. And now the sort of conventional wisdom is now he's got to give some stuff back in committee, maybe even today, to the Freedom Caucus. Is it A, that Johnson geniusly gamed the whole thing out, and he's doling the stuff out on a pre-recorded plan, knowing that you piss him off, but then you give him something, so you bring him on board? Or is this all ad hoc, Dan?
Oh, I think there's a little bit of a plan here. I mean, they knew they were going to have to thread this. They knew that the seesaw was going to the pendulum was going to go back and forth a little bit. I do think to some extent you're making it up as you go, because the asks are being kind of made up as they go. And one thing I found interesting is the Freedom Caucus is beginning to openly talk about, we're going to lose the majority. This is our one chance.
Yeah.
So what if the moderates go down?
Yeah.
They're probably going down anyway. So let's just go for broke, which, by the way, is exactly what some Democrats said on healthcare and stuff, which is ironic.
And I will say I find extremely admirable this notion of you can't do the right thing because of the next election is insane. If you're there to do something, do it for both parties.
True. Yeah,
for both parties. All right.
Nobody votes for somebody to win the next election. They vote for somebody to do something right now.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, or say, I know I'll lose, but it's the right thing to do. Like if they're a serious party about spending restraint, do it now. You'll literally never get a better chance.
I do think Mike Johnson's political abilities and political acumen is one of the most underreported and underestimated skills in Washington.
Totally
DC.
agree.
How many times have we heard that he's lost it? He's no way he can win, and he always pulls victory. So I'm not counting him out.
And you read in those gossipy Hill publications that there's grumbling now about his leadership style. It's like whatever. Results matter. He's doing an extraordinary job so far. All right. Someone put in the chat a few minutes ago, I don't read the chat, but I do read my emails. And I've gotten a lot of emails lately from people saying, you're not covering what's happening. Trump's poll numbers are going up. Your liberal media, you're covering it up. And it's true that there was a Reuters poll earlier this week. There's some polls showing him ticking up. But I said, well, margin of error. If Trump's poll numbers were going up, the onus would be on us to say, well, why? What's happening? And the reality is, stuff has happened, including with the tariffs, which the press looks as like a political disaster. They could be raising Trump's numbers. It could. There's reason to think that could. Action, fighting China, America first. There's reason to think his numbers could go up, not by a lot. So I was skeptical about this concept until I saw one poll. Don't want to overreact to one poll, but here's a poll from Emerson of New Jersey voters. They asked Donald Trump and the Democratic governor, Phil Murphy, fave, unfave. Look at Trump's fave, unfave there. Favorable, approve, disapprove. Sorry, approve, disapprove.
Basically even.
Basically even, better than the Democratic governor in New Jersey. Yeah. So Larry, don't say this one poll is gospel and this means Trump's super popular in New Jersey or anywhere else. But is it the case, do you think, that Trump's, whether his numbers have gone up or not, is there reason to think that that's a plausible thing, that in the last couple weeks, things have happened in a way that maybe his approval rating is slightly higher, at least? Well, like watching the budget committee. Go ahead.
Yeah, like any good radio talk show host, I always assume that every poll is wrong unless I agree with it, and then it's or
the people's poll. The people's poll. Yeah, people's poll.
But I think that there's a constant weight on Trump's numbers. I think this has been historic. I think that it's always going to be reported lower than they actually are. Number one, because of the coverage that he has. I mean, no politician has been covered in the negative and frankly unfair fashion that he has for the last 10 years. Yet he still continues to survive and win, for that matter. But I also think that just the way polling is in general, it's always the support for Trump always appears to be somewhat underreported. So if you're seeing it flat, as you just said, Mark, and he's basically hasn't gone up, hasn't gone down, to me, that's a win. That's a victory, especially considering the coverage that he's had on the economic front for the last couple of months on the tariffs, egg prices, all of that.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, I think it is likely that his numbers have come up slightly because in the last, let's say, 3 weeks, he has slowly begun to get out of the tariff stuff. And so what you had in the headlines are deals, right? Deal with China, even though it isn't really a deal, but it was reported as a deal, sold as a deal with England. The markets have come up. I think they've almost erased all of the Liberation Day losses. So he's had some good news in the broader market. If you look at your 401k, we'll see if inflation starts to rise, that could change. But I don't think he's ever going to really go below 41, and he's probably not really going to get much higher than 50. So if he is now up around 45, 46, 47, I guess, in New Jersey, that sounds about right, considering he's had, and the trip has been a success this week. Yeah. I don't know when Emerson was in the field, but if they started Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
I think it was on the front end of the trip. So
yeah. Okay.
Well,
I can see it.
And Dan, the inflation prices, forget about worrying about whether they go up. They're trending down. They've been trending down. We just got another month that beat the estimates. Plus yesterday's number of the wholesale prices. And in fact, not just a reduction in the increase, they're actually in negative territory when the street was expecting it to be up about 0.5%. All of this is trending in the right direction. And Mark, forgive me, that Emerson poll, you said it was New Jersey. Isn't something happening this November in New Jersey?
Yeah, governor's race.
Yes,
yep.
There's a governor's race. So the Democrats widely say will not be a contest. So, all right.
We'll see.
We'll keep watching the budget committee. Punch Bowl is reporting that Mr. Scalise, the leader, is meeting with the budget holdouts at some point today. I don't know if they're going to vote before Scalise meets with them, but they're continuing to express optimism. They're going to get the 3 or 4 holdouts enough on board with some adjustments to get the bill through. All right. Either of you want to say anything about Russia, Ukraine?
I mean, just where's Putin still? I mean, that's the $1 million game at the end of the day. Zelensky's there for the deal. If Trump's goal this coming into office was to get Zelensky to make a deal, Zelensky's there. Putin is not. He never has been. He does not want to accept anything other than taking Ukraine.
I would also say, I don't know, Dan, when Mark played that clip of Trump, that was the first time I had seen that clip talking when he was asked about the Russia, Ukraine, and the talks in Turkey. Is it me, or did he seem kind of pissed? He seemed a little annoyed that Putin is leaving. That's the pain threshold here, I think, on what's going to happen with Russia and Ukraine is how far can Putin push Trump? And here's Trump coming off of this whirlwind Middle East tour where he's celebrated. Everyone's treating him with respect and love and kindness and gifts. And here's Putin basically disrespecting him. I think he's starting to get annoyed. I think it's reaching a breaking point.
All right. Some of you would like us to talk about the Biden acuity story daily, and some of you would like us to never talk about it again. Let's talk about it briefly, okay? Politico has a big story about how Democrats, including some 2028 people, are handling it. Governor Shapiro leaning harder than almost anybody but Ro Khanna into saying, Biden had problems and we didn't do anything. But then there's the receipts. He in real time was defending. The other thing is the press continues to write stories like that Politico story, which I'm going to read a quote from in a moment. They write stories saying about the Democrats and their cover-up and their denial that could apply to the media themselves. It's just the irony is ridiculous. So let's put that up. Put up my tweet from this morning. This is the paragraph from Politico that caught my eye. And again, this is the Politico writing about the Democrats. On some basic level, this is about credibility and authenticity. Biden's decline while in office was apparent to most voters. The public was upfront from very early on in the cycle with their doubts about his age and acuity. And so the ability to acknowledge what is plain in most voters' eyes risks becoming a basic test of candor and honesty. True about the Democrats, Larry, but also true about the press, correct?
It is. And I mean, listen, I think the press, frankly, is the bigger scandal here. And that's where we need the biggest correction, because we need a free press in this country that doesn't fall for the, and then the whole case that they've been making for themselves and how Trump is an existential threat to free press and the First Amendment is that they need to be there to hold a White House accountable. And obviously, I mean, you can finish the sentence yourself. But if I can real fast about these Democrats, I think this actually directly relates to the reconciliation process that we're going through right now, because the Democrats, every single one of them that dodged questions this week about Biden, they all said the same thing. We're not looking backwards. We want to look forward because the Republicans are cutting Medicaid. Well, Republicans are saying that's a lie. So the American people have to trust somebody here. Who do you believe, the Democrats or Republicans? As long as the Democrats continue to hang on to this lie, the biggest lie, the great lie about Biden's competence, there's no reason to believe them about Medicaid either. And I think that that's going to play into this the reconciliation conversation.
Totally agree with you. And Eric Erickson was on 280 Night last night, and he wrote this in his newsletter today. And some people are going to recoil at this. So don't recoil and don't attack Eric. Just if you disagree, listen, hear him out. Eric thinks that the cover up of the Biden acuity scandal by the Democrats is worse than January 6th. And he makes a principled argument for that. Go read it. Go read it. But again, if you're a Democrat, that recognize that's the mindset of some thoughtful, at least some thoughtful conservatives. And you should think about it. Don't have to agree with it. Dan.
I actually think it's a pretty good analogy. I mean, both were, I mean, I'm not sure one's worse, but I think they may be equal. Both were just based on outright.
Eric's point is one happened for one day.
Well,
and it involved a limited number of people, and the other happened for 4 years and endangered America's security.
Right.
And everybody lied about it except for one congressman from Minnesota.
Well, I haven't read it. I disagree with some of that, but both were lies. And I think that and I've said this now for a while. I've actually thought for 2028ers, this is going to be something you're going to get dogged by. I think it's something that Schumer and Jeffries and everyone, I think even if you are a new candidate running for office, you're going to get asked about this. Like, it's just, it's too easy to do it. And I think that and Mark, as you said, the media is not doing themselves any favors by just having absolutely no accountability and self-reflection on their own. And then I know I see it in the chat, I see it on X and everywhere, like Democrats pulling their hair out about why people won't listen to what they're saying. Well, you just have to look in the mirror. Like, half the country.
And if you're somebody like Shapiro or Ro Khanna, and you want to put yourself forward as someone who's now telling the truth, you've got to address the previous statements you made. You've got to. Larry, you live in Washington, right?
Annapolis, but I'm in Washington all the time.
Do you know any Washington journalists who watch our program?
I do, many. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. I want to get on their good side.
Journalist viewers, meet me at camera one. Okay. I'm going to give you a little free advice. Take it for what it's worth. Here are 3 questions you should stop asking Democrats about the Biden acuity cover-up, okay? Don't ask them, were you surprised by the debate? Because, as I've said, anyone who wasn't surprised by the debate, claims they weren't surprised by the debate, is lying. Because he exhibited all those traits previously. Stop asking, should Biden have run for re-election? No one could possibly think he should have run for re-election. No one. Even if he'd won, some people would say no. But given what happened to the party, no one could think that. And then 3, did you see signs of his decline in private? Again, who cares? They were all on display in public. So it doesn't matter if they want to admit they saw it in private or not. The single question they should be asked, given Joe Biden's obvious mental decline in public, why did you not speak up? That's it. That's the question.
And if I can add to that, not speak up about him running for re-election, because it's maddening to hear all of these questions focused through the prism of should he have run again? Because should he have been the president? We have a 25th Amendment for a reason.
Correct.
The book is called Original Sin, and I have a hunch that the sin is that they let Trump win. That's what they're really angry about.
Correct.
And if I were advising a Democrat, I would actually advise he or she to write an op-ed in like the New York Times or whatever, and do a mea culpa.
Correct.
I was so concerned about Donald Trump that I was willing to just shove everything aside and go all in for a guy that I knew was not there. It's
and I'll just say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'll say the other thing I'd put in the op-ed, which is he was an incumbent president. He'd been a leader of our party for half a century. It would have been a very hard thing. And we didn't want Trump to win. So the risk of speaking against him, I felt at the time was not something I should do. And I should have at a minimum gone privately to the White House and say, I know you won't like this, Mr. President, but you shouldn't run again?
The first Democrat who does this for 28 is going to leap to the lead,
Yes.
and it's
That
going to
is
be
why I would-
Gavin Newsom.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to be Gavin Newsom because
Dan-
he has no shame at all, and he will throw people under the bus because he's
By the way,
a maniac.
I said this on one of our shows like 2 weeks ago. Exactly that. The first person that comes out, you just shed all the weight. That's it. Like now we're just going to look forward.
Dan, if you have time today, why don't you write the op-ed for your Substack?
Ooh.
Or write it for a potential candidate and get on retainer.
Exactly. All right.
Mark.
We're going to do winners, losers, what to watch for this weekend. And after that, we're going to go to your questions. So please, if you want to be in on the conversation, raise your hand. For many Americans, the opportunity to ask Larry a question would be something before the advent of two-way unthinkable.
It's so
and
true.
yet today, it's possible. All right, Larry. Well, let's start with Dan, so Larry can ease into it. Dan, winner of the week for you.
The White House advance team. That was a great trip. It's now basically over. They're flying home unless they detour somewhere. But assuming they are on their way back to D.C., this was one of the best trips I've seen in years.
Larry.
That's actually Sean. Sean gave me his winners and losers because he's just that desperate for attention.
Sean's not here. He doesn't get his
well,
winners.
that was his winner of the week. My winner of the week are people who bought my book about the 2024 election instead of Jake Tapper's book. It's all about how the media covered up for Biden, covered up for Harris, and lied about Trump. Shameless Liars. It's available on Amazon and Audible, narrated by the author.
When did it come out?
It came out first week of February. I was ahead of the game on this.
So how are you the winner this week, Larry, regarding the book?
How am I what?
It's just a great plug. Come on.
All right, never mind. All right, yes, Larry's the winner.
Because we shouldn't give Jake Tapper money. We should give it to me.
Got it.
And my
it's
family.
A fill-in. Okay.
And my children.
How old are your kids, Larry?
I've got 4, 25, 23, 20, and 18.
Have you ever seen the video?
2 tuitions.
Have you ever seen the video for my Bloomberg show where I put up a giant picture of Mitt Romney's grandkids and asked him to name them all?
Yes, I did. That was a brilliant. I do remember.
It's still one of my favorites. Yeah. Still one of my favorites. Dan, thank you. Dan, my winners. I agree. I'm not. I know we're usually good to have different ones, but the White House advance team. It's just like it's obvious answer. A loser of the week, Dan.
Yeah, we actually just talked about it. The Dem 2028ers. That this is going to be a anchor on them in the near future. And I think, whoever the first person is who figures out a way to break out of this, which I think is honesty, will earn themselves some good momentum.
Larry.
Sean's loser of the week is James Comey for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
My loser of the week are Democrats on the Hill who really had a plan this week to go after Republicans now that we're actually in committee talking about reconciliation. They had their talking points about cuts to Medicaid, and none of it went anywhere, partly because of the Biden question and partly because Republicans were pretty good at exposing the Medicaid cuts or really Medicaid fraud.
All right. My losers of the week, it's a tie. Jerry and Ben are the losers of the week for their performance at the Kennedy hearing.
Order?
I like to shake things up. Jerry and Ben. Nice. Dan, what are you looking for this weekend?
Looking for the Madison Square Garden tonight. My Knicks, can they close out the Celtics? And the big Subway Series, can the Mets take down the Yankees this weekend?
Two important philosophical questions. Larry.
Yes.
Sean is looking for how many times Mike Johnson calls Trump this weekend, which I think is
very good one. That's a good one.
And I'm looking for President Trump's photos with his new grandchild and sort of, again, rehumanizing this man as a person that a lot of people, even those who disagree with him, are starting to kind of like.
That's a good call.
Larry, have I ever told you my story about Donald Trump and grandchildren?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I have to say, I do believe, based on his interaction with his granddaughter who spoke at the convention, that he's maybe changed his posture towards being a grandfather. Okay, but in 2016, when Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac in Phoenix, when they had a chance meeting, and Trump, made a big deal about that they were conspiring to get the charges against her, or no charges against her. Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch, through their spokespeople, said the main thing they discussed on the plane was the grandchildren, their grandchildren.
That's right. Yes.
And they were on the plane, I think, for 20 minutes. I forget how long it was. And Trump said to me in an interview, he said, "We know that's a lie because nobody could talk about their grandkids for that long."
Ooh. It's kind
And
of the cell phone, isn't it?
It's like every grandfather or grandmother I know would be like, they could talk for, the whole day about their grandkids. But Trump's is like, I got them dead to rights because nobody could be that interested in their grandchildren.
By the way, Mark,
I do think he's changed.
I broke that tarmac story when I was writing at hotair.com. It was reported on a local Arizona
Phoenix
TV
Phoenix
station.
TV reporter broke it. So Larry, if they broke it,
I expanded it.
You made it national.
Platform.
Larry, I'll tell you, in the internet age and the social media age, the Phoenix station, I think, had a pretty wide reach on that one. So I'd like to hear more at a later date about how you broke that story.
I believe it showed up in the WikiLeaks. John Podesta, remember when the WikiLeaks emails broke?
Said that you broke it?
Podesta forwarded my article to everybody on the campaign team saying this is a problem.
Larry,
I'm going to take this.
Someday you and I are going to talk about whether Bob Novak or I broke the story about Bob Dole's vice presidential pick. But not today, because I've already told too many boring stories.
It was Jack Kemp, by the way.
It was. Thank you. I reported it first. May Bob Novak's memory be a blessing, but he did not break that story. I did. Andrea Mitchell also thinks she broke it now. Lastly, my what to watch for this weekend can be summed up in 3 simple words. Let's go Knicks. Thank you very much for playing. Larry, couldn't be happier to have you here. Let's see how you handle live fire, beginning with Joshua. Welcome in, Joshua. Unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what is on your mind.
Yeah, hi. I'm from Indiana, near Purdue University. Go Boilers, and also go Pacers. I think Pacers in 6 against the Knicks, and I think depth is the key issue there.
All Dan and I care about, Joshua, is you think it's going to be the Knicks. So we're
he's
good.
already got
exactly.
the Knicks winning. I can hear Sean screaming somewhere in the greater Washington area.
Yeah, Joshua, welcome in. And just because, Larry, man, I know this, Joshua's going to have not only peace, love, and understanding, but Hoosier values. So, Joshua, floor is yours. Thank you for being part of Two Way.
So I think I want to, it's not really a question, but kind of more of a, the media, I think you guys give it a break a little bit when you stop at just the debate. I think the bigger issue is even what happened after the debate. The 3 weeks after the debate, they were like the greatest media of all time with how they handled Democrats and how they pressured them. But then as soon as Joe Biden dropped out, he was George Washington, and he was the greatest and, one of the best presidents for the selfless act that he did. And I just feel like, I know Jake Tapper is going to be on Megyn Kelly, and I if I had research and had time, I would go and look up clips of how he handled those 3 weeks and then how he handled up to the election, because I almost feel like that's more of the malpractice from the media.
Yeah, you're completely right. Their behavior afterwards almost looked like they were trying to clean up again so that the Democrats could win. It had nothing to do with what was best for the country, or for that matter, just relaying facts and information to the American people, which last I checked is what the media is supposed to do. And also, let's not forget what they were doing for the 3 weeks leading up to the debate, where we had the trip for the D-Day celebrations, for the G8 summit, the Juneteenth concert in DC, and the fundraiser, the infamous George Clooney fundraiser. Whenever people on my side of the equation, right of center media, pointed out what everyone could see with their obvious eyes, we were told we were propagandists, we were liars, we were engaging in cheap fakes, and the media ran with that narrative from Karine Jean-Pierre instead of actually examining the facts. The media comes out in no way the winner in any of this.
Dan.
Nothing on Larry. He's 100% right on that. Josh, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is remarkable that once he dropped out, everybody kind of, moved on. And then there were people raising questions. Should he still be president? In fact, there was a fear on the right that if Harris became a sitting president, it might actually kind of lift up her stature.
But the press wasn't doing it.
No, exactly. That's my point. It was all on the right, but they just kind of pushed him aside. And I've said this at the time, and I'll say it again. It is stunning that from November 6th until January 20th, Donald Trump was essentially the president. I mean, both traveling abroad, whenever anything happened, Joe Biden, until those last 10 days, basically disappeared. Yep. And it was unbelievable.
Yeah. And if I could jump in on one more thing on that, it's like, who was running the White House? I know that the joke is that Joe Biden used the auto pen for everything, but that's not true. He didn't use the auto pen. Someone else did.
He was running the White House. Yeah. He was running the White House. This is where I caution people on the right. Stay inside the lane here about what we know about Biden's infirmity. He was running the White House.
How do you know that? I mean, what's the objective source on that?
Because people on the right want to say Obama was running the White House the same way they wanted to say that Michelle Obama was going to be the nominee.
I'm not saying anybody was. I'm asking who was.
Here's what I can tell you. I could give you 100 stories about Biden making decisions. 100. You can give me you cannot give me a single story about someone else running the White House. Not one. I don't believe. If you could, you would have reported it before. And Biden had many good moments. He gave the State of the Union address. He had many good moments. He was not consistently out of it. So he had enough good moments to run it. Now, was he running it 24/7? No. But they allowed him to make his decisions in the time frames when he could. So until someone produces a single story of someone saying, well, the president can't decide this because he's in the corner drooling, so Ron Klain's going to tell the Pentagon to fire some missiles, or Jeff Zients or Barack Obama. Until there's one of those stories, I think it is wrong and dangerous and deleterious to the interests of the right, who'd like to highlight Biden's mental acuity and all the issues that are true, to pretend that we know that Biden wasn't running the White House. There's no evidence of it. None.
All right, if I could,
yes, sir.
If it's accepted fact now in conventional wisdom that there was no way that Joe Biden had the mental acuity and the wherewithal to be a candidate for president, then is it?
That's not the case.
I thought that was
accepted.
I thought that was the entire thesis of this book that Tapper is pushing right now.
Well, it's up to the It's up to the voters. It's up to. I mean, the thesis, he had severe mental decline going back to at least 2017. That's not in dispute. But that doesn't mean other people were making the decisions. Those aren't the same thing.
So if he didn't have the capability to run for president, he did have the capability of being president.
Well,
that's what we're supposed to accept.
I don't know what you mean by having the capability. He had good moments and bad moments. Someone who has good moments and bad moments should not be running for president, and they shouldn't be president. But that doesn't mean that the mechanisms of the White House decision making accommodated that by allowing others to make presidential decisions.
One more, and then I'll let Dan in here. If that's the case, and I'll go ahead and accept that premise, then isn't it incumbent on the Biden administration, whatever's left of the people who still align themselves with that presidency, to explain exactly what did go on during the bad days?
I don't know what you mean by incumbent. I don't know what you mean by incumbent. They should.
Well, I think that they owe the American people an explanation.
Well, I think it would be,
we all agree he had bad days, so this is what we did when we had bad days.
I think it would be good if they did, and I think one of the many issues I have with this book coming out next week is they purport to expose the cover-up. As far as I can tell, there's nothing in the book that addresses the question you just raised.
Yeah,
I think what will come out, because I do think whoever is the first or the second staffer to write the tell-all is going to make a lot of money, just to be really blunt about it. And I think there is an incentive to put their kids through college and buy their dream beach house. I think what Larry, they probably I think what Mark is trying to say is, if you run for office, right, it is a stamina, it's an endurance test. You got to give interviews, town halls, etc. Right? Biden couldn't do that. So as a candidate, he was terrible. I don't think Biden, Trump seems to be up around 5 a.m. and seems to go to bed around 1 a.m. Right? And I think people can come to him throughout the day. Sir, we need this, we need that, right? And he'll do what he does. I believe it's kind of pretty apparent that Biden functions between 11 and 4, right? And maybe even between 11 and 2 was when he was sharpest, right? Sharp enough that he could make decisions. He had calls with world leaders, where he was cognizant enough to make a decision. What we don't know is, was there a decision that needed to be made at 5 p.m. that got kicked to the next day or 2 days later because he was having a bad day?
And that's the standard.
But no, it's not the standard. But it might have
made
been.
It. It's that they delayed making the decision.
Exactly correct. And Larry, just to be clear, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm open to,
Josh, thanks
if
for the
Barack
question.
Obama was faxing in instructions about running the government, or Rahm Emanuel, I'm open to that. I'm just saying, to assert it when there's not a single piece of evidence that what's happened, I think is wrong. It's just wrong to do.
I didn't assert. I was asking who was running the White House. Now, if the answer is Joe Biden, then great. But I need to see some evidence.
You're right.
Forgive me for being a little raw on this issue, because I had to suffer through panel discussion after panel discussion after panel discussion based on Trump 45 being incapable of being president.
Understood.
We had psychologists diagnosing him on
I hear you. You technically did ask us a question, so I apologize for suggesting otherwise. But the way you asked it is the way people on the right ask it all the time. it conjures up the concept that it's true. We just need to get to the bottom of it.
Wow.
Joshua, thank you.
I
hear you.
Yeah.
I know. Joshua, thank you for being here.
You just kicked it up.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Joshua.
Laura Weiss, who writes for Punchbowl, spoke to Mr. Norman, Mr. Roy, and Mr. Clyde, the three of the heretics on budget. And Roy and Norman left the markup and wouldn't say how they'll vote.
Yeah, there you go.
All Norman would say is that he'll be in the room when they do vote. So presumably now, oh no, here's another tweet from her. The holdouts are coming back, but they won't say how they'll vote. So let's keep an eye on that, Paul. I doubt they'll vote in the next 15 minutes, but let's keep an eye on it.
Was it when Bush was flying back from Europe that Karl Rove and Bush were famously on the phone? I think it was Medicare Part D. There was like a vote, the donut hole, and Rove was just like berating. I wonder if the line from the Air Force One to the House cloakroom is burning up right now.
Good history. Good history. Let's dip in. Let's just see what they're up to here in this committee meeting.
Oh, it's like being back on the Hill.
And now recognize my friend, Mr. Buddy Carter from Georgia.
Buddy Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this meeting here today. Let's face it, folks. President Trump inherited one big, ugly mess. And what we're doing now is trying to fix that with one big, beautiful bill.
All right.
We're fighting to get this nation back to the level of prosperity
as much as I believe
we
that if
enjoyed
I'm writing
during
a novel about Congress and I want a Georgia congressman, I would name that character Buddy Carter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the main thing we learned.
Central casting.
Central casting. Kyle, welcome in. Welcome into the Larry O'Connor Show. Please unmute. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind, and thank you for being part of Two Way.
Yeah, I'm calling from beautiful Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Nice.
Beautiful.
And Mark, I got a quick question. Is that a quarter zip?
It is a quarter.
Yeah, we need to know. What do people think of this?
Is a quarter. Put in the chat how much you'd pay for this one, folks, just for market research. Just put in the chat. It's a beautiful quarter zip.
Mark, you've had a lot of items. You've had like the navy, the light blue. I think people need to say which item they would be willing to pay the most for.
Oh, eventually we'll circle back to that.
Okay.
Eventually we'll circle back to that. But for today, just how much would you pay for this one? It's a quarter zip and it's extremely comfortable.
Not everyone can carry off that color as well as you do. Gotta say.
Nice color. $80 maybe?
Beautiful.
$80?
$80. It's going to be more than that. Trust me. Kyle, what's on your mind besides my clothes?
Well, I got so many points I've been watching for a while now. I think everybody should watch Theo Vaughn at the Air Force Base or whatever base they were in the Middle East. I think that was excellent to a point that Hegseth's probably not going anywhere, to the dismay of many. Back to the Democrat presidential race, I agree with Dan that Whitmer hugging Trump is not a bad thing. It's probably a good thing for presidential hopefuls. And Shapiro, I don't know if you guys heard about this story, but in Pennsylvania, there was a guy who firebombed the governor's mansion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if that has an impact on him running. You know, his family was in there.
Yeah.
And it was pretty serious. It wasn't like some guy throwing a Molotov cocktail at a brick house. I mean, he broke in and set the place on fire.
Yes, sir.
But my question is, what happens to the media post-Trump, where they've been infatuated with him for 10 years, and they can't talk about him so much anymore?
I think one of the questions is, does he, the question part of it would be, does he leave the stage, so to speak? Like, not run again, but I could see him sitting in Mar-a-Lago and still kind of commenting on everything, especially if a Democrat wins. I think he could, I don't see him just walking away. Be interesting if JD Vance is president, how much he'd pipe up versus potentially, like, does Trump host a talk show? Does Trump, go on Fox all the time? Like, I just can't see him keeping his mouth shut and staying out of the side. So they may not have to face that. But to your point, ultimately, it's a great question. And what does the media look like in 4 years? I don't think it'll look like it currently does at all.
Yeah, I think Dan's right on that regard. But also, I think the question also transcends to the Democrats because they have been defined for a decade now based on one idea, which is to oppose Donald Trump. They've got to come up with something new themselves to be a viable political party. People want to vote for something,
100%.
and they don't have it.
A few things. First of all, it is premature to announce that Donald Trump will be hosting a show on Two Way. That's all I can say at this time.
Wait,
second,
I have a follow-up on that.
Yeah. Second, I forgot to mention this item and all the items I've been wearing are from our friends at Fairway and Green. So that's, if you're wondering why these are so nice, they're from Fairway and Green. Lastly, Kyle, would you vote for Governor Shapiro if he ran for president? Why or why not?
Probably not. And I don't really know too much about him, really, even as a Pennsylvania resident. I think he's fairly moderate and flies under the radar. He's done some good things for infrastructure and moving projects along quickly, and there's some
Kyle, did you vote for Trump? Did you vote for Trump?
Yeah, I'm a 3-time Trump voter.
Yeah. So I find it interesting that you hesitated and then you had a list of things that you actually kind of liked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I mean, I'm not just going to point out
the bad things. It's a good sign for Governor Shapiro. Yep.
I think he's trying, but I think Pennsylvania's kind of a mess politically. There's just a lot.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. Thanks for coming in. Sarah Ferris of CNN is reporting the following, that the holdouts in the Budget Committee would like to have a delay on the vote. And the speaker says, in the style of Bill O'Reilly, do it live. So he's calling their bluff. And this is a strategy the leadership of both parties sometimes use. The holdouts say, no, we want to negotiate more. And the leaders said, no, we're going to vote, and put the leaders on the spot. And Dan, as you suggested, maybe the president will call the cloakroom, but this is a high stakes poker here on the floor.
I mean, the problem is, even if they hold out,
or not the floor, but in the committee.
Yeah. Like, what are they getting? I mean, that's the problem. You pull one card and other things start to move. And the Freedom Caucus is going to get rolled.
Yeah.
You guys have a better institutional memory. Other than cap and trade, can you remember a major piece of legislation like this that didn't get passed somehow, one way or another? They always figure it out, don't they?
I mean,
healthcare in 17.
Yeah, Bush's Social Security plan, the immigration bill. It sort of depends on how you define. But this is a must-pass bill. So in that sense, Olga, welcome in. Thank you for being part of Two Way. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind, please?
Wow, I cannot believe that I actually made it to Two Way. I've been watching since. Do you hear me?
Yeah,
yes, ma'am. Hear you fine. Great. Thank you.
I've been watching since during the elections, I guess in the summer, and pretty passionate about the Maha movement. I was
where do you live, Olga?
Near Scranton.
Near Scranton. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I immigrated to U.S. in the 90s from Moldova, which was invaded by Russia at that time. So we, I kind of was around and we ended up here. But I was going to say about the Maha movement that I was part of it before it became popular, like in the teens, 2014. And it was interesting because our group of like crunchy moms, we had people who were, on the right, like religious people who would, consider like the whole movement from like a religious or conservative point of view. And we also had people on the ultra left that were kind of suspicious of special interests in corporations and the pharmaceutical industry. And we were fine. We were all getting along fine until the pandemic came. And as soon as it became like a thing, like vaccines and all of that came to the national stage, our whole group split into two. So now we have, the people on the left kind of went to the left, and then people on the right went to the right. And I was left in the middle. So I'm kind of curious about whether this is something that happens with a lot of topics where kind of people are able to get along until it becomes a national issue, and then the media kind of starts taking sides, and that's how it kind of tears people apart. And I'm wondering if there's a way back from that, because it seems like every single year, I mean, like even from like 80s, 90s, people are more and more radical. I mean, it could be related to the internet, social media, or whatever. But it doesn't seem like there's a way back. Like it pays to be radical. It pays to be, you know, out, like, do performative outrage.
Olga, is literally one of the best questions in the history of the platform. So thank you for sharing that. How old are your kids?
14, 12, and 3.
And how big was the group when it was at its full size of the moms?
Just a couple of hundred. We were Russian.
A couple of hundred. That's a lot.
Yeah, it was no. It was on Facebook. It was like a small group because we were Russian speaking crunchy moms. So we were very, very niche type of
okay. And were you all in Pennsylvania or from around the country, or?
No, all over. Most people were from New York, but you know, we had people from
did you ever meet in person?
Yeah, we actually started a little theme camp at Eastern European Music Festival. We did like awesome things together until the pandemic, and then that's it. Now no one is talking. The group is not active anymore. It's just crazy.
Okay, so all three of us have about 100 questions for you, and we're not going to have time to get to all 800 questions. But I want to let Dan in first. But you raised great questions. We can't answer them. You raised all the right questions, and Dan will address them. But we'd need several hours to try to grapple with what you raised. But you framed it perfectly. So Dan, you can either ask Olga a question or try to address, at least in part, the very important things she brought up.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick and then address, and then I do have a question for you. I mean, look, this is always the classic issue when a group starts to reach, when it rises up as a collective. Usually there are different interests. Everyone, you know, probably overlapping things that people want, but then there are individual things as well. And then you get on the national radar, and now you have a moment like this. Everyone's like, but I want these 3 things. No, I want these 4 things. And it starts to splinter a little bit because you get disappointment. Certain voices are louder than others. What leaders are picked, what staff. And so it's hard for a movement to hold together, which is frankly why it's hard for movements to survive more than 2 terms, right? Or 3 terms, like from a presidential cycle standpoint. You just get disappointment. And then it splinters and somebody says, I'll take that mantle and run. My question for you is there one issue that has split you guys the most that you could point to say, this is the biggest bridge to cross?
Honestly, I mean, it started with the COVID vaccine. Like that was the main issue, which, you know, we were fine with accepting people who, you know, didn't do vaccines at all, or people who did like once in a, you know, just delayed vaccine schedule. But now it's basically the issue is that you cannot talk to these people because I mean, on the left mostly, because they're incapable of just listening to points of view. You know, you like sometimes, like for example, with the COVID vaccine, I was skeptical because it's new. It was a new thing. You know, there were so many instances in the history of pharmaceuticals where, you know, a drug comes out and then it has repercussions for years to come. And some people were just crazy enough to just start like taking the vaccines without even considering the effects of it. And I had a friend who, as soon as the school made the vaccine available to 12-year-olds, her daughter was 11. She just sent her in there because they weren't checking ages, and she just sent her daughter in there without any anyway. So like that was the issue. It's the lack of conversation. It's as if, you know, people just stopped being able to listen to the other person and just try to see their point of view. I think like this is happening kind of on the right now. You know, I feel like now on the right, you're getting the same thing where they're like incapable of like trying to even listen to, you know, the idea. I mean, I'm not, you know, transgender issues. I'm not rooting for one side or the other. I think each community should do what they want, but you know, like to kind of generalize the whole movement as one thing, it's difficult to speak to people like that, you know, and that's how I think like it falls apart.
I'm going to warn our affiliates we're going to run a little bit over, thanks to Olga, Larry.
But it's worth it. I promise.
This is awesome.
It's worth it. It's incredible topic.
A quick side note, though, this is weird, but Russian-speaking Crunchy Moms was the name of my improv group in high school when I was still in the drama club. So, I mean, it's just weird that we're now connecting, Olga. I think part of this, and I'm going to reach back to my theater days, you know, you hear the word narrative a lot in the media and in politics. Narrative is just a euphemism for storytelling, right? You want to tell a story. That's how you can convey a message. That's how you can compel people. And in the media, especially during the pandemic, the storytelling was, well, the oldest of all time. When you look at the ancient stories, it's always good versus evil. It's good versus bad. It's these people are going to kill you. These people are trying to save you. So that heightened so much during the pandemic that if you didn't get the vaccine, you're killing my children. If you don't wear a mask, you're killing my grandmother. And it's kind of hard to reconcile that narrative if that's what you're hearing and that's what you're learning. And I think that sort of made things that much more heightened, and it made it so much easier for these groups to splinter this way over things that I think in other times wouldn't have split up a group. But my question is, are you encouraged by what the Trump administration has done with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., with Jay Bhattacharya, with all of the appointments that they've put into these key positions to sort of right that ship and send a message to moms like you that they get it, there will be accountability, and they take it seriously?
Yeah, with Jay, I was following him from the beginning. You know, I was so happy to see Dan here just because my Democratic friends kind of went more to the left. So I was left in the middle. But with Jay, I completely agree. I mean, he's rational, he's using science, you know, there's reason to listen to him. With RFK, I don't agree with a lot of his positions, but I think that it's just the whole health and pharmaceutical, arena is just so swampy that I think he will do good to just, whatever he can do to kind of rattle the whole thing, to get like all these special interests out of it, or bring some major issues to light on the national stage. I think ultimately it will be a good thing. I support RFK. Even though I didn't vote for Trump, I didn't vote for any of it. I'm more on the left,
Yeah.
Did you vote for Harris?
I did.
You did. Okay.
Yeah.
But my main issue is the Ukraine issue. That was kind of the thing that is on my mind in the last couple of years. I just think it's extremely dangerous, but that's the main reason. Like I might have not voted for anyone if the war was not happening.
Well, I asked if you voted for her, not just.
Olga, I know I'm speaking for a lot of people who are listening now and will watch the show later, that your story will stay with us. It resonates. Immigration, COVID, mom culture, Maha. And I have two requests. I'd love for you to come back often, but particularly when we're doing Maha shows, we'd love to have you be part of that conversation. And if you can convene your group, I don't know if you're still in touch with them. We'd love to have all 200 of you. We'd love to have all 200 of you on two-way and try to talk it out. I'm not kidding.
I would love a Mark Halperin focus group of that group
exactly.
on some Maha issues.
Yeah. So if you can come back with one Democrat and one Republican or more, we'd love to do that. So
the floor is yours.
Very grateful to you for doing that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on. Please come back regularly.
Bye.
So Larry is multilingual. We now know.
See,
and Larry is an incredible craps player. Am I right?
Who told you that? Oh, I think I know who told you that.
It turns out Larry is good friends with Two-Way's own Meghan McCain.
That's right.
Megan turned on the show. It's like, Larry's on.
Yeah.
Booyah.
My wife Meredith and I had a really fun night at the MGM Grand with Ben and Megan. In fact, we're long overdue for another night out. But yes, we did pretty well at the craps table.
Megan is her dad's daughter in so many ways, and that man loved to gamble. He loved to gamble. Loved the tables.
Megan and I we're very good friends. Ben and Megan, we love them.
Delightful. I wouldn't have opposed you guest hosting if I'd known. Just kidding. Larry, we couldn't have. No, I'm not. We couldn't have loved having you on more. And I know I'm speaking for pretty much everybody. You just stepped right in, and just very grateful to you for making time.
Well, Sean is a great mentor of mine. He's been, he's 20 years older than me, obviously, and he's taught me everything that I know.
Yeah. All right. So update on our day's big story before we go. You think I might be talking about the budget committee hearing, but no, the Subway series, roll tape.
I thought it's great.
We're recording, right? What do you think of Yankee Stadium in comparison?
That's everything I needed to know. He said so much without saying a word. That's acting.
I mean,
Kind of blah.
it's very corporate.
Oh, wow. Even the Yankees fans are agreeing.
It's very corporate.
Where's the soul? Where's the spirit?
It's very corporate.
When I think Bronx, I think corporate. I like Yankee Stadium more, but in any event, big weekend here in Gotham City for sports. The city that now sleeps far too much. We'll all be up late watching. Dan, thank you. Larry, come back anytime. Love having you on.
Appreciate it.
Come on,
I had a
come on the
blast.
evening. Come on the evening show too.
Anytime.
All right, maybe a guest host for me on the evening show.
I am
Mark,
America's guy.
Mark, who do you have coming up tonight, by the way?
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. I was about to get that. We had somebody, but they had to cancel because of family emergency. So currently it's open. Maybe Olga will be on. I don't know, but it's wide open. I'll be there, and we'll talk about today's news. Here's one of the two things. Thank you for reminding me. I am going to the game. I said this yesterday, and I got no takers. I need a place to do the show near near Madison Square Garden tonight. So if you got an office that's empty near Madison Square Garden, please let me know. So I got to be right there at 6.
You should email our friends at GSG. They're right across the street. Jeff Pollock and co.
No. They're further downtown.
They're right Penn Station. Unless they moved, they're at one Penn Station.
I don't think they are. I thought I just had lunch with one of them, and we were further downtown. Anyway, please contact me if I can do this show from your office near Madison Square Garden. Yes, Larry.
Sean Spicer has Stephen K. Bannon tonight.
Oh, that's
I
right.
want to make sure that I plug the hell out of that.
Thank you for that. Yes.
And for you talk radio listeners, I'm filling in. You talk about fill-in host. I'm filling in for Mark Levin tonight from 6 to 9, coast to coast on that.
Amazing.
Mark
You'll
Levin
miss the first half. Larry, where can people see your work on a regular basis?
Whatever video platform they're watching on right now, you can catch me at noon every day. Well, not every day, Monday through Thursday on The Larry Show, or you can listen live 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. on WMAL.com.
Folks, don't let this be the only opportunity in your life to enjoy Larry's content. Please use this opportunity to spend part of your day with Larry when you're not here on Two-Way. And then a reminder, a new episode of Next Up, where I interview the extraordinary gentleman from Arizona. Dan, who am I talking about? Charlie Kirk, the great Charlie Kirk. And Megan and I talk about the Biden stuff. And Megan is her usual spicy, salty self and run through it. And then another monologue from me on the media and the Biden thing and why this is an opportunity for the media to come clean rather than pretend what happened didn't happen. So that's available on YouTube, on Next Up YouTube channel, and wherever you get your finer podcasts. We will be back on Monday for this program at 9 a.m. And as Dan and I will say in unison, our final 3 words together.
Let's go, Knicks. That's right.
Thank you all for watching. See you on Monday. And I'll